So at the end of last year, I did a video going over every single album that I listened to, gave a quick sentence or two about every album just to give my quick thoughts on it. I'm going to be doing the same thing for January of 2023, obviously. I'm probably going to be doing this for every month. First album is Animals by Pink Floyd. The eccentric vocals, intricate and ambitious instrumentals, and the gripping progression of the 3 middle tracks makes for an album that is easily my favorite from the Pink Floyd boys. Amber shows immense potential with this debut album. I just hope she can more concretely define her sound on her next album. Man I Trust falls victim to the worst parts of dream pop with this album. The vocals are limited and expressionless, the drums are basic and boring, and overall it just kind of feels like a very plain and basic dream pop album. Once you look past the flashy hyperpop isms within this album, most of these songs are uninspired vocally and lyrically and extremely repetitive. Arcade Fire goes in a more theatrical direction with this album, and they also expand their instrumental palette while still kind of delivering their usual cathartic and explosive sound. It's just a short and sweet 13 minutes of pretty standard Still Woozy tracks. The contrast between the beginning of the first track and the ending of the last track is mind-blowing, and it should be studied in schools. This is a quiet yet crushing project from a man who's allergic to making bad albums. I decided to listen to this because of the goofy ass cover. I knew that was a mistake as soon as this man said pre-cum. While the vocalist is often a non-factor, the folk and country leanings make for a pretty refreshing dream pop album. The cheesy and flat chord progressions with this one take away from the unique ways in which Amber writes about familiar topics. While the synth textures and drum sounds are great, Chaz does leave a lot to be desired vocally. I get the sense that Angel Olsen is someone who really understands herself, and while that does result in some deeply personal lyricism, the presentation and some questionable production choices just kind of make this one fall flat for me. This is one of the most unique rap albums I've heard. The production is cold yet vibrant, and for the most part, Vince matches the energy of these beats. Brakence further proves with this album that he is one of the most colorful personalities within the hyperpop scene. However, his writing is still his biggest weakness, and it severely lowers the quality of this album. This is just a masterfully produced indie rock album with an intro that's one of the most unique songs I feel like I've ever heard. I mean, everything is terrible about this album, like everything, but specifically, the ad-libs are so laughably loud and obnoxious. Just play the 13-second mark to the 20-second mark of Keep It Cute, and you'll see what I mean. The band's pop sensibilities come through pretty heavily on this album, so much to the point where almost every track has an instantaneously sticky hook or guitar line, but most of my gripes do come from the timbre of the vocalist. Whether they're annoyingly nasal or overly theatrical, they're definitely the weak spot of this album. While this is more accessible and straightforward than Ugly Season, Michael still comes through with some beautiful yet haunting vocal performances supported by stellar atmospheric production. This is an emotional stunner where Lenker is once again in her own class lyrically. I do wish that the instrumentals more fully embraced the dissonant, distorted, and chaotic aesthetics that are occasionally displayed, however. This is probably Phil's most stream of consciousness heavy album yet, which does occasionally add to the album's charm, but it does also leave me feeling like some of these songs are just kind of unfinished. This is the perfect mix of bubbly playfulness, sass, and pristine beauty. This is Gene's worst project in all aspects. The genre-blending production is awkward, the writing is easily his most corny, and the vocals range from comatose to outright awful at points. It's interesting to see some of the ideas on here that were fully developed with Pixel Bath, but in a vacuum, this isn't anything I see myself returning to. The generic trap drums on this one generally do take away from Blade's uniquely alien vocals. This is a delicate and gentle experience with consistently enchanting vocals and an uncompromising atmosphere. This is one of my favorite albums I've heard in a while. This album does have some stellar, lonely, and kind of synthy soundscapes, but the vocals often come across as lifeless or even overdone to the point where they feel kind of annoying and forced. It's just a very solid debut from the legend. Shout out MF Doom. While the flows are one-dimensional and the bars are weak, the mixing is really what makes this album so terrible. Every track is either soaked in way too much reverb, drowning in bass, or distorted, and not distorted in the way that's fun or charming, just distorted in a way that's grating. What makes it even worse is that Redville's low vocal register kind of tends to get buried in the mix as well. Similar to his most recent project, there's some decent and creative ideas on here, but the execution just falls completely flat for me. Instrumentally, this album ranges from bubbly and playful to aggressive and driving, and it does so seamlessly with Damon Albarn's iconic voice and personality serving as the heart and soul of the record. I decided to check this out because I thought this band was like super cool as a kid. But it turns out this music sucks. This is literally just nothing music. There's no nothing to grab onto here. This album is kind of just begging to fall into the background, which is exactly what it does. Multiple times listening to this album, I completely forgot that I was listening to music, so this thing is awful. This thing is terrible. Explosive guitars, groovy bass lines, and one-of-a-kind vocals make for a pretty forward-thinking and exciting psychedelic record. While this album does have its moments of instrumental density and lyrical prowess, the album kind of just boils down to a 90s sad boy album that can often feel derivative of Slint and can also kind of lack variation from track to track. In just 21 minutes of music with this EP, boygenius finds a way to let all three vocalists shine equally. I'm super excited to see what they're gonna do with the album they have coming out this year. While cute and easygoing, this instrumental project from Max suffers from a lack of variety and overall a lack of ambition. While the production and songwriting is generally passable and okay, Lukas Graham Cracker fails to come up with any original ideas on this album. Every track either sounds like a ripoff of AJR, Ed Sheeran, Maroon 5, even Dua Lipa at points. While this album does have some standout songs and moments, and it overall does feel kind of nostalgic, which is nice, the album in general is a little all over the place in my opinion, which ultimately results in the tracklist feeling a little disjointed. This is just a soulless cash grab of an EP from a rapper who really has no talent at all. Ice Spice has one flow, and she sticks to this boring, monotonous, monotone flow for the entire album, and it's kind of a pain to listen to. Callie covers a wide variety of styles with this album, and she pretty much does every single style with precision, confidence, and skill. All right, that's it. Those are all the albums I listened to in January. That was 38 albums. I'm happy with that. That's pretty solid. That's more than an album a day. So yeah, the top 5 from the month were, my favorite album was Windswept at Dawn by Chico Aoba, Animals by Pink Floyd, Halcyon Digest by Deer Hunter, Crest by Blade and Echo 2K, and then Set My Heart on Fire Immediately by Perfume Genius. Those were the top 5. The bottom 5, we'll start with the worst. The worst was Coexist by the XX, terrible. Baby on Baby 2 by DaBaby, like the EP from Ice Spice. Niagara by Redville, and Sweet Action by Jack Harlow. There's a lot of hip-hop in there. Am I becoming a hip-hop hater now? Hopefully not. That's everything I listened to in January. Obviously, I listened to more albums, but those were like repeat listens. These were all the new listens that I had this month. Let me know your thoughts on these albums down below. Let me know if you disagree with anything super heavily, and I'll try and keep doing this with every month. That's going to be my goal. I want to listen to a lot of new music this year, so hopefully I can continue doing that. And yeah, go subscribe if you want, go like if you want, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.